I'm Katie Leeds.
I'm Marissa Senzaki.
We are your strategic partners for evaluating personal and professional development trends.
Welcome to another episode of Live, Laugh, Shut the Fuck Up and Listen. Today, we invite you to take a look back at the best and worst self-help gimmicks of 2023.
Yes, does having a word of the year really make a world of a difference? Do you need a vision board? Should you be having a book list? What do you think, Marissa? Does making a plan really make a difference, or do we make plans and the universe laughs?
Well, I don't know. I mean, we always hear that people set New Year's resolutions, and most of those are broken. The old idea of signing up for a gym in January and you stop going by February. So I don't usually make the typical resolutions. Part of that is because I feel like I'm a very goal oriented person anyway. So I'm always setting them, every month, every quarter. So things that I want to do, little milestones that I want to reach. But we both have set words of the year before. And so I think that's kind of an interesting take. Apparently, it's a lot of people do it, but you're actually the only other one I know for sure that does.
I
But I
only
saw
did it
someone
last year for the first time because everyone
saying,
else was doing it. So we both actually entered this. It's funny, I might have been the one to tell you about it, but it was my first year experimenting with it as well. So, and you've done vision boards in the past. And I did my first vision board this year because I've hosted workshops for vision boards for kids before, but I've never actually created one. I've brought people in that were experts at making them. And this time I hosted the darn workshop, so I had to make one. What are your thoughts on that trend? I'm calling it the old trend because I don't know if people are still making vision boards in 2023. I think our attention spans are so little that we've narrowed the board down to one word.
yeah, I don't know. So when I made a vision board the only time that I actually recall was a long time ago. I want to say like over 10 years ago. And it was in my old studio apartment. My neighbor, who I shared an entrance in the same hallway with, she invited me over for dinner. And I was like, oh, that's sweet, get to know my new neighbor. And it ended up being kind of like a girls' night dinner party where they all made vision boards. And I was like, well, guess I'm making a vision board now. Um, I could not tell you what I put on there, but I don't remember it, quote unquote, working.
And working is an interesting way to put it, right? So I guess I probably should have done some research on what do people think will happen if they pick a word of the year. But for me in 2023, um, well, I let the word pick me because this is how I bump my way through life. It was on a wine bottle called Uncaged, and it had an owl on it. It was a Pinot Noir. Dan bought it home for New Year's Eve. Everyone was doing this word trend on LinkedIn. I thought, uncaged. I could do some uncaged, Katie. And I didn't really give it a ton of thought on what does that even mean to live uncaged. How did you get your word for 2023 and what thought did you put into it?
So when I did my word of the year, or I called it just an intention, um, I was like, yeah, like resolutions, who cares, or trying to accomplish something. Maybe I just want a feeling. And for me, I had delved into a lot of like personal development work, as studying attachment theory, that kind of stuff. And I realized like I don't actually have a lot of self love, at least at the level that I think should be healthy. And a lot of us are not taught that growing up to, how to love ourselves. And so I chose just the word love. And that meant learning to love myself better, learning to accept the love from other people, and like recognize that and really embrace it, telling people that I love them. Um, and funny enough, I happen to have a wine bottle that I kept because I really loved the label, and that label was called Self Love. It's from Tank Winery in Calistoga. They always do kind of different fun types of wines and are always switching it up. So I love that parallel that we have.
We call that a synchronicity in my world, and those
Yes.
are the universe is flirting with us. Um, did you? And so you kept your wine bottle. I kept mine as well, and we know the subconscious is always taking in these subliminal messages. And there were definitely times throughout the year that I would land on seeing uncaged, and I would think about what that means for me. And I recorded a podcast this week just looking back at what I've learned. And we're in the dead of winter, so I'm not setting a new intention or new beginnings right now. But I was thinking about, how do I want to live out the rest of uncaged? And at the same time, also, will I find a new word? Of course, a new word will find me. And uncaged for me is similar to you with all the self-development. Like the first comes love, then comes marriage. I think after self-development and certifications, first comes self-love, and then comes letting your love fly. And for me, uncaged was, I'm not going to a coach. I'm not getting a certification. I'm not having someone pour into me. I want to live like myself. I want to be uncaged. And what I realized is a lot of those bars are self-imposed. But that's not a reflection that came in the middle of the year. It was a reflection that came after looking at that wine bottle on and off for the entire duration of 2023, and then sitting down in the middle of recording a podcast to explain to my listeners what it meant for me. How did you see self-love and showing up in subliminal places for you throughout the year?
I mean, it probably was on the wine label before I made it my word of the year. I don't know. I think part of the struggle too, even if it's a word rather than an entire resolution, is just remembering to come back to that. Because I definitely had to remind myself at times, like, I'm not coming from a place of self-love. I'm not realizing how much love I actually have in my life, how much support I have from my friend group. So for me, I don't know if I picked up on a lot of subliminal, but I definitely started following more like accounts online that talk about that, and reading
So
more material.
You created more subliminal messages for yourself. Uncaged was so it's interesting because I could have said self-love as well. Like, uncaged was a reminder that who you are is perfectly fine in this moment. So for me, when I self-reflect on, I talked too much in that coaching session because that throat put pressure on me. Uncaged looked like, and it was perfect. Uncaged for me looked a lot like similar to self-love in that it was self-directed. Uncaged means I get to fly and choose what branches to hang out in and where to go. And I had it on my vision board because I did the vision board. I wrote, I know you're supposed to use magazines. I just wrote uncaged because didn't do any prep for it. But one of the other subliminal messages that I kept seeing that I kind of forgot about halfway through the year until I looked at my board is a clipping that says, after 100 years of making bacon the same, we are announcing we're not changing a thing. And I think that's kind of what it summed up for me. Like, what does it mean to be uncaged? We have these places we get conditioned in society. And then we think, well, if you're not changing, you're not getting better. But Katie at 0 to 7 years old, Marissa at 0 to 7 was pretty fabulous. So not changing a thing is like, well, yeah, society's changed us. I'm over here trying to get back to all those gifts I was born with, so that my soul can share them, not so I can be a different version of whatever society says is the best version of Katie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the commonality I'm hearing there is really allowing ourselves to be our authentic inner child that was meant to be.
Yeah. And so self-love, I think, uncaged for me almost sounds like the action of self-love for me. Like what I defined as an action of self-love. And, the year before that was very much similar to you of, I didn't have a word, but it was like, if it was, I'd probably be like acceptance, which is how you get to love yourself. You just accept what is. Byron Katie, which if you haven't listened to that episode, I wouldn't accept her, but you should love what is.
So have you chosen a word for 2024?
Oh, Marissa, I don't choose words. They choose me. I love this question. So, truth be told, I went to the Sparrow Wine Bar, and I'd like to actually host my Friday Sips and Solutions there. So I feel like that's another serendipitous moment. This woman just happens to be my neighbor. She happened to have won baseball tickets I donated to an event, and that's how we met each other. And they had a new wine. I said, "What's your new wine that you have?" And she said, "Truth be told." And we both have what open solar plexuses, and one of the open center, when it's open, will avoid confrontation and truth. And I put professional truth teller on LinkedIn for myself. I did that several months ago, maybe a month ago. I don't know. I had a bug that flew in and like just dropped it in my ear, and I updated it. But my greatest gift I provide is truth and transformation. So truth be told, transformation requires action, hence my word engaged. It requires interaction and engagement with the world. But I think that the word has chosen me, clearly. It was on my mom and dad's wedding anniversary. Did I mention that, Bart? I think it'll be a catchphrase. Maybe I'm upgrading. Everyone's doing words of the year. I'm going to do a catchphrase. And that actually feels really aligned with me because I have a lot of catchphrases. Before I became a coach, everybody knows we go to sushi every Wednesday. I have questions. That was always, "Hey, pretty lady in the front's got a question over here." Like that was my catchphrase for so long. And that's a almost like a subliminal message on steroids, because you're also speaking it, which is truly how we manifest when we speak to the universe. So truth be told is going to be, I think, my catchphrase for 2024. So if I have to be a word, I guess it would be truth. Or transformation. I'd probably pick that one. I don't know. I can't decide. Catchphrase. I don't want to limit myself to just one word this year. But on that quest, this is how you know I have ADHD. On the quest to find a word, I found myself in the wine aisle at Total Wine on New Year's Eve, like desperately feeling like I had to find. And I looked at every bottle of wine that I would like to drink, and there was nothing that stood out to me. And I did get a bracelet and a candle that had the word alignment on it. And alignment felt like a word that would be a word of the year for me. But it's also a word that I've been saying a lot in 2023 to my clients. So truth be told, catchphrase.
I love
it. How about you?
Yeah, I like what you just said about the word finds you, because when I sat there and I was like, "Oh, I should pick a word," it didn't really come. And then I don't know how it came to me. One day I was just like, abundance, because I was thinking through, I've realized I have a bit of a scarcity mindset about things that is totally unfounded. And so I'm trying to get past that. And I was like, well, what would be the opposite of scarcity? And I was like, abundance. How can I have more of an abundance mindset and stop worrying about things that I don't need to worry about?
Maybe I should send you my candle that's called abundance. If you can't find a wine bottle. There was an exercise. I followed the rules. I don't remember what any of these letters mean. So I don't know if I have abundance or not. I remember I created this because these each meant a word, and it was like north, south, east, west, but I don't remember what the hell it meant because I don't. But abundance was my word. I guess technically it wasn't my word. It was my candle. See, I have a word, but I don't have a word. It's a different place. But wanting to bring in abundance, and I haven't lit it all the way. Look at how abundant I am already with just lighting this much candle. Maybe this will be like the sisterhood of the traveling abundance candle.
I love it. Yeah. And I think it's, the word has to go beyond just the word. So for me, I talk about feeling it or having it be just the intention of how I approach everything. So if I'm trying to think about something, does this go in line with is it aligned with abundance?
Aligned. See how funny that is? Yeah. Really, we should always be looking for alignment. We should always be asking ourselves that, right? And how do you see abundance and self-love? Or will you be creating that abundance of self-love as well as you carry in? Because as I remind people, we're still in the dead of winter. We got to keep doing our old words too.
Well, self-love is going to still be there. So I'm not dropping anything off or exchanging it. I like to think it's like a new skill that I'm adding on.
Mm.
And so abundance, how that relates to me for, well, just love in general is just really remembering and realizing all the great people that I have in my life that love and support me. And, you know, when I feel lonely, remembering that I have that, like tonight I'm invited to a dinner party and just um, taking the time to appreciate those things.
I wonder what the Akashic Records has to say about your abundance, Marissa.
Mm.
Perhaps a future episode. We've talked before about this being a year where you get your mojo back.
Yes.
What does an abundance of mojo feel like for Marissa?
Ooh, that would be just like exciting and liberating. Yeah, I think when I've talked to you about like being depressed or just not feeling inspired by things lately, um, I had this idea of help Marissa get her mojo back, and how do we find that light inside again that will yeah, just spark me to be excited about things again. I think the things that I used to love, that I used to get really passionate about, a lot of those things just aren't like filling me up the same way anymore. And so I see it as this transition time of, I know that there's change on the horizon, and I know that I'll get there. I just don't know how I'm going to get there, and that's where some of that anxiety is. And I'd love to just explore, you know, we've talked about all these different thought leaders and methods and tactics from the previous year. I would love to delve into that more hands-on.
Mm. Yeah, so the anxiety of the how things happen. So bringing back to the vision board as one of those gimmicks. There are people that swear by their vision boards and that they'll tell you the story of all the things on their vision boards that have manifested, except for this one thing, or maybe it is all the things. And when I was putting that together, what I realized was like I could make a vision board every day. I have visions all the time, but I'm not attached. And so one of the things I had written on that vision board was co-working space. And there was another woman that was that I led this workshop with, and like 6 months into the year, someone was talking about opening co-working. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so great. Let me know if you want someone to like do X, Y, and Z. And she said to me, didn't you want to open one? Isn't that on your vision board? I'm like, well, I'm not in charge of how the vision happens. I just want to I just want a place to go. And I had a bed with a canopy that's like overlooking an ocean that I put on there. And someone's like, "Ooh, you planning a trip?" And I'm like, I don't know. It just felt like I should probably take a vacation. So I put it on there. Perhaps people give more thought into their manifesting, but for me, it could create anxiety. If I'm looking at this board every day and I don't see how I'm going to get to there, you know, we're both generators. We don't know the next step until we finish the first step. And there may be 1,000 steps. So we don't know that. And it really can pull you out of the present. The positives I found were actually not a lot of the clippings I put out, but the words. Just the way I think I'm designed. But I had a picture of Katie's corporate classroom, like a chalkboard, and I had written 3 words: communication, consciousness, challenging conversations. Those are things that are still relevant for me. I was really into the C's. I don't know what was happening that day. Katie's corporate classroom, like
Well, we both love alliteration. We know that.
we sure do. But what I have found is that they're fun exercises because you get to kind of pull stuff out that you could dream big. You can, you know, kind of see what's sitting there. And then your job is just to sit back and watch. And like I had a picture of a husband and wife and a baby, and I didn't get a baby in 2023. There's not one on its way in 2024 that I'm currently aware of. Best-selling author of all time. There's someone with like their shirt open that says bestseller. But they're also, you know, I don't know how that's going to happen. It doesn't really matter how it's going to happen. It was for me just, I could make a vision board every day.
Yeah, you know, that actually reminds me when we're talking about things that maybe haven't worked for us. I did the whole like uh I don't know if it's a mantra or just like positive words on post-it notes. And I put that up on my wall and I just like look at it every morning while I brush my teeth. And I'm like, I mean, I think my confidence has grown in some areas, but I don't know that it's because I read my sticky notes
Mm.
every morning. Um,
And you also don't know that it wasn't because you read them. And I like to remind people as they evaluate experts on our podcast that correlation does not always equal causation.
mhm.
How do you make it measurable? I was looking at, so strategic planning is kind of a thing, a gimmicky thing. Yes, I'm going to say it. Take that, businesses and corporate. 3x3x3 strategic planning model from Free to Focus, Michael Hyatt. I bring this tool into corporate a lot. I bring it to people who want it, crave it. I don't really care about crossing things off a list all the time. Usually I just make the list in the moment because that's the moment I know I need to do things. But I did do this gimmick of creating my 3 goals at the end of the year. What do I want to be celebrating? And I looked at each quarter, what do I want to be celebrating? And what I learned is the 3 things I had for 2023 that I wanted to focus on. One, I didn't because I made a different choice. I led Fim City. And that's the one I really want to bring into 2024. So back to not changing a thing. I knew in January the 3 things that I was most excited about, most lit up about. I don't need anymore. The rest of them will get revealed as I go, but I got to finish those first. And so that was an interesting insight for me. You know, when I think of a gimmick, I think of an opportunity to experiment. And I think a lot of people go into gimmicks as, oh, it's worked for so many people. And like they go in with this belief that this is going to bring them something. And the minute you put an expectation on something, 68% of us have shot ourselves in the foot because we've made some type of arbitrary promise on a vision board to ourselves that we're going to get something. But the practice of it itself, I learned more about myself. I'm not changing a damn thing. When you think about evaluating these thought leaders and trying out some of these gimmicks, so to speak, or as they call them, well researched, the research is showing, what are you ultimately, looking for and hoping to find?
I think that's the trick there is kind of what you've said of this expectation. I think doing away with the expectation or the belief that there's this one magic solution that we just haven't found it yet. Because a lot of these thought leaders, they have a story to tell, and because they have some overnight transformation, or maybe they worked really hard and they've tried everything, this was the one thing that worked for them. They often tend to then act like this is the one thing that's going to work for everyone.
Hmm.
I have the solution. I'll teach you a little bit. You have to purchase it from me, and then this will be life changing. And I think we just need to do away with that belief. And what works for one person might not work for another. And you know what? Maybe something works only in certain aspects. Maybe you need a vision board, and you need a word of the year, and there's just maybe it's several different things. Fulfill different
Mm.
needs. So I would say not having expectations, experimenting, being playful, but having that open dialogue with others to talk about what has worked and what hasn't worked for you.
Yeah, I had a client this week. She's had several career coaches and whatever coach bucket, executive coach, whatever you want to put me in the bucket. And something she shared is when she would come with problems, when she would come with areas she was stuck, these coaches would give her a solution. Well, this is how you have to do it. This is how it works. Let me walk you through this process. And for her, what was so freeing was that I looked at her and said, so this is how you operate. And now you know that about yourself. Every summer, you are not going to be as productive as you are January through April. Let's make a plan for that. And now I'm always looking for where does your water flow? And what I find so useful in treating myself like a science experiment is that I get to learn more about how I flow. I've always had, a focus on what are the things I want to accomplish this year. I've never really done the whole quarterly goal and I need 3 goals a day and make these little chips and create a pile.
Mm-hmm.
I also don't work in corporate. I don't know that I have to do that to keep myself organized. I also always ask people, what does that life bring you? And so when I look at experimenting, I look at the end. So what did the life bring me of word of the year? It brought me some really cool reflection that I wouldn't have normally had. And it's getting me to think about it because everybody, the whole collective is looking at something at the beginning of 2024. So it's given me something to sort of anchor around and explore. Like, what did I do? Actually, I'll probably be more engaged in the next 3 months than I was in the last 9, but that's sort of how resolutions work anyway, right? We're really, the other thing it brought me was more synchronicity. I had decided, hey, you're forcing it. Leave it alone. Don't worry about the year, word of the year, blah, blah, blah. And then I walk into a bar that I've been in before. And literally the first thing she says to me is, hey, I have a client that needs to meet you. You got to meet this person. And then I get the bottle of wine. It's truth be told. I'm like, you know what? Truth be told, we're going to, same damn thing. I'm going to keep doing. That doesn't mean I don't want to learn. And I think that's
Mm-hmm.
also where I see the gimmicks becoming a problem. We're looking for a better version for ourselves versus just looking to learn more about your real self.
Mm. So what would be, I guess, your intention or wish for the Shut the Fuck Up podcast for 2024?
Truth be told, sponsors traveling and doing some of these podcasts together, the two of us live. I think bringing on some guests also sounds
Mm-hmm.
really fun for shutting the fuck up and listening. Um, we want people to evaluate experts, so-called experts. We want people to make decisions for themselves and be empowered for them to feel like they can trust themselves. So truth be told, I want people to trust themselves. Truth be told, I want people to tune into a podcast to like spark something new and, to learn a little bit about themselves, but not to have a gospel and to think critically, right? We've talked a lot about that offline on really raising the collective's critical thinking. When you mentioned one magic solution, all I could think of is like when I went to church, that experiment for several years. I'm like, we have the solution. And what's interesting to me about that experience is that what I found under the hood is that they didn't have the solution they promised. Your anxiety goes away when you give it over to God. Give all your troubles, you pray, like God answers them. But when you get into groups where you're with the pastor's wife and you're with all these people that tell you these things, and you're like, but this doesn't even work for you. And I think a lot of these people that we evaluate, like if you were to get under their hood, being self-empowered is just you're self-empowered. You don't teach other people how to do it like you do. You just be the example. You be the model. You lead it. You leader it. But Jesus did that. So the solution that you're selling in your religion is that's not what Jesus was talking about. I had someone came up to me, are you religious? They were giving out pamphlets. And I'm like, no, and neither was Jesus. Remember, he was angry at those people.
Yeah, and we talk about leading by example. Like I think for my wish for the podcast this year is to, like you said, show people how we think critically about the personal development trends that are taking place out there, the different thought leaders that people follow on social media, and really learning how to kind of decipher that and take what is meant for you, leave what's not, but really learning that you can turn inwards because you are the expert of your own life.
Mm. And truth be told, I'd love it if everyone was shutting the fuck up, listening, and creating catchphrases for 2024, right? Let's be trendsetters, Marissa. Now, truth be told, we don't want followers in the sense that we want you to follow us. We would love for you to follow the podcast, Marissa. You could, where can people follow us on the podcast and also to find you?
Yes. So our Shut the Fuck Up and Listen podcast is part of the OWL professional coaching, or is that the Outstanding Women Leaders, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
So the Outstanding Women Leaders channel, which you can find on Apple Podcasts, Podbean, YouTube as well, if you're watching us on video. And my personal website, marissasenzaki.com. You can visit me there, send me a message. I focus a lot on career and helping people to build confidence and clarity in their careers. Katie,
Mm.
tell us about your human design work that you do.
If you are on a quest to become a leader, it is synonymous with becoming yourself. And so human design is a way for you to understand yourself. And I had a client today who summed it up brilliantly. She said, I'm conditioning myself to act this way and think this way. And I laughed. I'm like, usually we tell people you're deconditioning from the way that you've been. But what she's saying when she says I'm conditioning myself to is she's saying I'm conditioning myself to be myself. And I just thought that was so brilliant because ultimately that's what it is. It's her being more of her. And the other thing she said when we first started the session was she was just excited about 2024 in a way I haven't seen anyone be excited about 2024. The youth. But her brother had died last year. And so what she said was, I don't have the anxiety that I've had before. And I have you to thank for that. And I always try to dismiss that because I want people to be empowered to feel that it's really, because she did the work, but she didn't let me because she moved on very quickly from there. She has no inner authority. She's a 3/5 projector. And that's what I want for people. And that's what human design allows me to be able to give people, is a chance to know who they are. And once you know who you are, then you know how to sell yourself and do all the fun things in life that work really well for you. And truth be told, I'm out of material. I got nothing else to say. Marissa, anything else to add?
No, I mean, I think part of what that says to me is the whole idea of sometimes you have to learn to unlearn. And so maybe that's part of 2024 is unlearning the patterns that haven't helped us.
If there was one gimmick that you were going to suggest in your expert opinion that people should give up, what would it be?
Negative self-talk.
That is a gimmick. You know, there's that meme with the panda, and I forget what other animal is in there. And they said, like, what's better, the journey or the destination? And the panda says, the company. I think it's a good reminder that you are the company. And if you are negative self-talk, if you are beating yourself up for mistakes, then you are the worst company ever. And you might want to evict that person and bring somebody else in. Last thing I'll say about gimmicks, I want to talk about what I'd like to leave behind is there seems to be this gimmick that if you fall off a wagon, first of all, there seems to be a proverbial wagon because I'll have clients say, well, you know, I've been trying it. And so then we'll move from do or do not. There is no try. But what you're really saying in that is you're saying, today I did it. Today I didn't do it. Today I did it. And you're solidifying for yourself that you can. But what happens is that people, when I ask them, they're like, well, I got to find a better balance. You know, I'm not always doing it. Like, this isn't a sobriety chip. Like in AA, if you make it 11 months or 11 years and 11 months and 27 days and you fall off the wagon, you lose your chip. That is not what life is. And so I think we are looking for perfection in professional development, and we're always chasing that when the reality is that isn't how it works. You could be sober. You could have fallen off the wagon 3 times in 12 years, and you're just as good of a person as the person that didn't fall off at all. The difference is that other person's in a cult and they have a chip. So what I would encourage people to give up is this idea that you're somehow getting a chip or a blue ribbon or, a grade letter, whatever. This is all the conditioning that we've had, is that somehow it's not good enough to just be good enough.
So just being is good enough.
Uncaged, because if you're in a cage, then you're not being you. But yes, just being is good enough. And how abundant there it is for you, Marissa, because you can be you 24/7. And that is a lot of abundance. You couldn't be you 24/7 in corporate.
Absolutely not.
Tune in next Friday to another episode of Shut the Fuck Up and Listen. You can live and laugh until then. But when it comes to Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern time, you're going to want to shut the fuck up and listen to Katie and Marissa because we are probably going live and it'll be very exciting. So stay tuned for more.